Over 100 years ago, an Austrian man assassinated the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This event triggered a chain reaction that would lead to one of the deadliest wars in human history, World War II. So let's review it in 10 minutes. In 1939, Adolf Hitler decided to start a war. He invaded a country called Poland and quickly This caused Britain and France to declare war on Germany. But they didn't really do anything for the first 2 years. They just sat around waiting for their chance. Meanwhile, Germany was conquering much of Europe with their new military tactic called Blitzkrieg, which translates to lightning war. This involved using fast-moving tanks and air support to quickly break through enemy lines. By 1940, they had conquered most of Western Europe, and France fell in June of 1940. But not all was lost for the Allies, because this is when the Battle of Britain began. It was the first time Nazi Germany suffered a major defeat. They wanted to take control of the British Isles, but the Royal Air Force fought back against the German Luftwaffe and won. This bought precious time for the Allies to regroup and prepare for but it also led to some interesting consequences. See, Germany thought that if they couldn't conquer Britain, then Britain couldn't help anyone else either. So they started looking elsewhere to expand. In June 1940, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini joined the Axis powers, and together they divided up more of Europe between themselves, while Germany took Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, and most of the rest of Western Europe. Italy got Albania. Meanwhile, Japan seized French Indochina in 1940 and set their sights on expanding their empire throughout Asia and the Pacific. Soon, the Germans and Japanese would be fighting side by side. But for now, they were still winning their own separate wars. Back in 1939, Joseph Stalin had signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler, but once Germany conquered most of Europe, Stalin realized he needed to get rid of them. There was only one problem, though. The Soviet Union wasn't ready to fight a war yet. Their army was too small, and their weapons weren't advanced enough. So Stalin spent 2 years getting everything ready while secretly taking land from his neighbors. Finally, in 1941, he declared war on Germany, kicking off the largest land invasion in history, called Operation Barbarossa. The German army quickly advanced hundreds of miles into the Soviet Union. At first, it seemed like the Soviets wouldn't be able to stop them, but they regrouped and launched the war on the Eastern Front would become the bloodiest of the entire war. We'll talk about it more in a future episode. But for now, let's head over to the Pacific, where Japan was having even bigger dreams than just conquering China. They were hoping to create a giant empire across East Asia and Southeast Asia, which would give them access to raw materials and food. In 1940, they invaded the Dutch East Indies and the British colonies of Singapore and Burma. But they were also eyeing something even bigger. Japan's ultimate goal was to conquer the Hawaiian Islands and the American mainland. They knew they couldn't do it right away, but by seizing these territories, they could slowly chip away at American power in the Pacific. But it would require a big first step, which came on December 7th, 1941. Japan attacked the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. Most historians agree that Japan made a mistake by attacking the U.S. It gave America the excuse it needed to join the war. And once the U.S. entered, there was no stopping them. In less than 2 years, the Allies had driven the Japanese out of most of the Pacific, and America was inching closer and closer to the Japanese mainland. So that brings us to the turning points of the war. Between 1942 and 1943, 3 major battles took place that changed the tide of the war. The first was the Battle of Stalingrad on the Eastern Front. The German army suffered a devastating defeat, which marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Just a few months later, the U.S. defeated Japan at the Battle of Midway, giving the Allies full control of the Pacific. Around the same time, the Allies pushed the Axis powers out of North Africa. So by early 1943, the Allies were in full control of the seas, and the momentum of the war had officially shifted. This led to the biggest invasion in history. D-Day on June 6, 1944. Allied soldiers landed in Normandy, France, and took the beaches despite heavy losses. This opened up what would become the Western Front. By September, the Allies had pushed the Germans all the way back to their original borders from 1914. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Stalin's Red Army was marching towards Berlin. By April 1945, they had surrounded the city and cut off all supply. Hitler committed suicide, and 5 days later, Germany surrendered. World War II in Europe was over, but the war in the Pacific would continue for another year. After capturing most of the Pacific Islands, the US set their sights on the Japanese home islands. They could have taken Japan the long way by invading through the south, but that would have taken too long and cost too many lives. So instead, they dropped 2 atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered 6 days later. World War II was finally over. More than 70 million people had died, including millions of civilians. The United Nations was formed to try and prevent another global war. And the Cold War began. But that's a topic for another video. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, check out my podcast where I explore topics in even more detail. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.